well. And again, if you guys do not have any recording function, please message me in the chat and I will allow that access. We're also recording this and we'll upload it to our media Google Drive. We'll start with an opening statement from Coach, and then please use the raise your hand function and I'll get to everybody. So with that, I'll turn it over to Coach.
All right, thanks. Thanks to everybody on the Zoom for being here with us this morning. And on behalf of our program, we're certainly honored and very excited to be invited to the Gasparilla Bowl and having another chance to compete as a football team. This will be the first ever meeting between Wake Forest and Missouri. We want to thank the executive director of the Gasparilla Bowl, Scott Glazer, for inviting us. And when we announced to the team that this is where we were going, they were very excited. I think the combination of the location in Florida, being able to go to Florida for the second consecutive year, the opponent, we love it when we get an opportunity to compete against the SEC. Part of it too, quite honestly, is it's great to have a bowl before Christmas. I think they're excited, and then being able to spend Christmas with their families and to have a little bit more of a break before we start the second semester. So I think in a lot of ways it was it's an ideal bowl. Again, the location, weather, the quality of the bowl, the opponent, and the timing of it, we're very excited about it. I know Eli Drinkwitz very well. I have a lot of respect for him. I got to know him when he was the offensive coordinator at NC State, and he did a great job there with the offense. He then did a great job at App and had a great season there and had a lot of big wins. And now he's done a great job in Missouri. And certainly this year is probably one of his best seasons. That, to start out 2-4 and keep the team together and finish the way that they did by winning 4 of their last 6 and their last 2 to be bowl eligible. That's not easy to do. And I think it's very similar teams that, we've won 7 and they won 6, but then you look at the season of what could have been. They have a 3-point loss to Auburn, a 4-point loss to probably the best team in the country, Georgia, a 4-point loss to Kentucky and a 7-point loss to Florida. So, there's 4 one-score games, and you flip that, and this could easily be a 10-win team. So I like Eli, and he does a great job. He's got a great sense of humor, and he'll be a fun guy to compete against. With that, I'll take any questions.
We'll start with John Dell.
Yeah, Dave, I wanted to ask you, you've been down this road before with preparation for bowl games. What do you think is the biggest challenge when you have that break and you try to balance, exams and everything else? What do you think is the biggest challenge with that?
Well, I think for the players, one of the things that we've always tried to do is to keep the bowl experience fun. We want our team every year to want to get a 6th win or a 7th win and to go to a bowl game. And so this week our players are in finals, and we're really, other than them jumping into the weight room a time or two, we're not really doing much with them. We want our players to focus on their academics and finish their papers and do their finals and finish the semester successfully academically. And then what we try to do, and we've done this every year with the bowls, is we try to get in 90% of the game plan before we go to the bowl site. So we almost want to feel like when we're traveling to the bowl, the game plan is done. The players know, what the game plans are and what we're going to do on 3rd down and what we're going to do in the red zone and all those situations. So that once we get to the bowl site, it is a little bit of a combination of fun and work. We want them to enjoy the events. We want them to enjoy Busch Gardens. We want them to have time together. To me, the greatest benefit of the bowl game is, just the camaraderie and the relationships it help builds on your football team. And if you go down there and all you're doing is practicing and meeting, it just feels like you're just in the season in a different location. So we will try to get a lot of that done before we head down to Tampa. And again, hopefully they can enjoy 2 or 3 days there. And then about 48 hours before the game, it gets a little bit into game mode, like we're in an away game.
Connor, go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, I wanted to ask about the opening of the transfer portal. Do you have concerns about any positions specifically where you might be thinner than if this thing opened in the start of January or something like that?
I mean, not really. I mean, we've had a handful of guys go in there. Anytime a player goes in there, that's one more than I'd like. But I think relatively speaking, we're probably on the low end. And in some cases, we don't have room for the guy to come back. Sometimes players will inform you late that they'd like to come back, and you've already recruited and filled the position. And instead of going to the NFL, they decide later that they want to test the transfer market. So, it's part of college football. I think most of our guys are planning on still playing in the game. We won't be at full strength, but we'll be pretty close to full strength. So again, it's part of college football in 2022. And, quite honestly, I think some of those guys are going in there to test the waters to see what type of name, image, likeness deal they can get.
I guess just to follow up, would somebody who's already entered the portal be able to play in the bowl game for you?
In some cases, if they've done everything right, and they're still going to class and they're practicing and they're lifting, and in the case that we don't have room for them to come back, I'm not going to penalize them by not letting them play in the bowl game. One of the young men in there, we'd like to have him back, but he let us know late that he'd like to come back. We've already recruited the position, and I'm not going to penalize him because he wants to still play college football. So again, it's a case by case situation and sometimes the players in the portal don't want to play. So I meet with each player individually and, okay, why are you going in the portal? Would you like to play in the bowl? And sometimes, it's almost like some of these guys that are declaring for the draft, they don't want to risk an injury for their next school. So some of those meetings will happen this week when I get back. In some cases, I know they're not going to play. They're already looking. And in other cases, I would allow them because of the circumstances of why they're going in the portal.
I take it you're not going to tell us the specific player who's you mentioned wanted to come back and there's not room for?
Yeah, and there still might be room for him. We don't know. We're allowed to have 85 scholarships, and I think, Connor, you'll figure it out, right? If a guy's in the portal and he shows up on December 25th in Raymond James Stadium, you can assume that's one of the players. So, and again, I have to meet with these guys. So, we had a recruiting weekend. Sunday night, I flew out to go do a visit with a recruit, and the portal opened Monday. And so I think a lot of these meetings you want to have face to face. So I'll try to have those meetings this weekend with the players and find out, would you like to play in the game? And if they say no, I'm ready to move on, then we'll move on. So in some cases, I really don't know if they're going to play or not. We're going to have meetings this weekend, and they'll let me know if they want to play, and we'll go from there. So roster management is one of the hardest parts of this job now because everything happens at once. The portal opened, early signing date is 2 weeks away. You really have no idea what your roster is going to look like for next year. It is a complete juggling act, and it's a challenge. And again, it's part of our job. That's what they pay us to do. But the timing of all these things happening at once is certainly less than ideal.
Essex, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. With a team that Wake Forest has never played before in Missouri, how important is it to have a common opponent like Vanderbilt for that film aspect and getting to know the team a little bit more intimately?
It's a little helpful, Essex. The only thing I would say is we played Vanderbilt the second game of the year, and they played them so much later in the season. So we were a different team later in the year than when we played Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was different. Missouri was different. So, some of the individual battles you can watch, and you get a feel for how Missouri's front is based on how they handled Vanderbilt's O&D line compared to us. But it's not as helpful as if we had played them within 2 or 3 weeks. I think there's a lot more carryover when the game's closer.
Cam Lemons.
Dave, you mentioned after the Duke game that you were tired, the team is extremely tired, and you've told us many times that the locker room is a dark place after a loss, and an even darker one when it's like kind of a bye. I guess you mentioned the portal, you mentioned roster management, you've mentioned let's finals. How do you necessarily, has there been enough time to really get the taste of the last few weeks of the season out of your mouth? And, as a player and as a coach, what are the struggles of trying to block out the noise of, is this guy going to the portal? I still have signing day in a week and a half. What kind of goes into that?
Well, to answer your first question, I certainly think the reaction to the bowl announcement was very celebratory. I mean, guys were fired up to go to Florida and have good weather, and the Gator Bowl was a great experience last year. And I thought our guys rebounded great last year after the loss to Pitt in the ACC championship game. And when you don't win a game and you put so much into it, especially versus an in-state rival, it's hard. But like with a lot of things, time heals wounds, and you reflect back, and we're going to our 7th straight bowl game, and a lot of our players on the team are responsible for that streak, and that's not easy to do. It's the second longest streak in the ACC. It's more than double the longest streak in Wake Forest history previous to this. And again, we don't like the way the season finished. But if you look back at it holistically, we are going to a bowl in Florida. We have a chance to win our 8th game against a good quality opponent. And I think you're always looking to climb that next mountain. So it's really not much different during the season, right? Whatever happened on Saturday, you got to get it out of your system by Sunday, Monday. And in some ways with a bowl game, it's easier because the Duke game is so much further behind us than a loss typically is before your next season. And with the transfer portal and name, image, likeness, and all these things going on in college athletics, it's just part of the landscape. I think as coaches, you always like to have control over things and manage things. And there's just so many things nowadays we don't have control over. And so you just got to rock and roll with it and adjust and adapt. And that's what we're going to do because we have no other choice. So I can't, if a young man feels that he can get more playing time or has an opportunity to make a lot of money from a name, image, likeness deal at another school, or it's a better situation for him, it wouldn't be fair of us to prevent that and to hold grudges and things like that. There's nothing healthy about that. So we support our players and we want them to be happy and find the best situation for them. And our job is to coach the guys that want to be here and love Wake Forest and want to play for each other. And that's just what the job is now. And we certainly accept that challenge.
Tony, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, putting aside the transfer portal uncertainty and players going or still to go or whatever, do you anticipate having a full roster for the bowl game, or do you anticipate having some players sit out as some are prone to do to protect their NFL status?
I mean, I'm not sure that I don't think we'll have anybody sit out for those reasons, Tony. I mean, it's, the past, we really haven't had anybody do that since we've been here. I think our players enjoy playing in bowls and like playing in bowls and want to play one last time for Wake Forest. Now, we've had guys that were draft eligible that couldn't play in the bowl game because of injuries. Last year, Ja'Cory Roberson couldn't play because he was hurt. And the year before, Boogie Basham was getting over an illness. But that, again, and we could have somebody do that, but that has not been, we have not experienced that as much as most. And I don't anticipate that we'll have a lot of that. We may have one or two guys do that, but I don't think we'll be that shorthanded.
Ben Conroy.
Hey, Coach. Yesterday, Coach Drinkwitz mentioned Sam Hartman and the offense and the receivers as some of the things that stood out about your team. I know it's early in the process of preparation, but what stands out to you about this Missouri team and the way that they play?
Well, like you said, Ben, it's early, and we found out Sunday at like 3:30 that we were playing Missouri, and I've been traveling ever since. So I've watched a little bit of tape on them, as I've been traveling, and I just think what strikes out is just their balance. They're very balanced on offense and defense. Eli's always done a great job on offense, very creative. They've always run the outside zone play extremely well. That's always been the bread and butter of his run game. But they have dynamic receivers. They have a very efficient quarterback. Some of those receivers they have are very high-end players in the SEC. So they'll be difficult to defend. And on defense, I think they're only giving up, 24, 25 points a game. And they've been statistically near the top, or certainly in the middle of almost every statistic. There was nothing that jumped out to me that they didn't do well on defense. So I think this is going to be a really balanced team. And again, he has them playing hard. They finished 4-2 and won their last two games. And when you finish like that, obviously you're trying to get to a bowl game. And they were motivated to do that. So if they're motivated to get to it, I'm sure they're going to be motivated to play in it.
Les Johns.
Hey, Dave, congratulations on the bowl announcement. It seems to me that, like, when you first started building this program, Dave, it was part of the reward for getting a bowl was to have the 15 days of practice, right? Because you're trying to build your program and you want to utilize every minute of that preparation as you're building these young guys. But it seems like this is just going to be like a week of practice leading up to the bowl. It's almost just like another game week in many ways. Is that right?
Not really. So first off, there's no, the 15 practices is a spring practice role, not a bowl practice role, that you can get in as many as you can get in. But we had 2 practices last weekend, Les, and we spend a lot of time in those practices with our younger players. At the end of every practice, we have a little Deacon Bowl, and all the young guys and redshirt guys get to play football. And we'll do the same this weekend. So we'll get 4 practices in that the focus is developmental oriented. And then we'll give the guys a little break and bring them back. And usually for a bowl game, or a typical game, you get 3 practices. You get Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll get twice that many. And so we will spend time in the first half of those practices, always taking time and doing developmental work and getting guys ready. So we're, we're not going to practice really any less because of when the bowl is. Typically when the bowl is after Christmas, we'll give those guys a week off. And in some ways this is easier because the players don't get as deconditioned. They don't have as long of a break. So again, our goal is to always, try to get to a New Year's Six bowl or make the college football playoff. That's our ultimate goal. And we've had some great bowls after Christmas, but again, I think to get to Florida and to have our players home with their families on Christmas Day is something that we're all excited about.
John Dell.
Yeah, Dave, I wanted to ask you, Sam Hartman after the game at Duke said he was going to play in the bowl game. What about beyond that? Is he content on getting, trying to get to the NFL, or have coaches been calling you offering up trades, or how does that all work with all this quarterback stuff with the transfer portal?
So, Sam has certainly told us that he's planning on playing in the game, and, we'd love to see him break the ACC touchdown pass record. And Sam's a guy that's going to finish what he started. And, I think his intention right now is to try to prepare and go to the NFL draft. But the way this name, image, likeness market is working, in some cases with guys of eligibility left, they may have an opportunity to make more money by going to another school for a year than going to the NFL. And if that's the case, we can't fault them. And so whatever decision Sam makes, we support him. Again, I think right now his intention is to go to the NFL, but when the bowl game's over, if there's some incredible offer for him to go to another school and get life-changing money, how can we fault him for that? So it's a good problem to have. He's going to have many good options.
And Dave, do coaches call you? Is that legal? I don't know how all that works. I mean,
the people right now making the phone calls and taking the phone calls you can't find those people in the NCAA manual. So I don't, I can only imagine what's going on behind the scenes. And again, that's just part of it. So again, Sam's been nothing but a stand-up person for us and has performed at a high level and done everything right. And whatever opportunities he has, he's earned. And I'm sure I won't get any phone calls from other coaches on that. That would be a first.
Essex, go ahead.
Coach, I know it's early in the postseason process, but are you at a point where you're starting to figure out, in terms of injuries, who's going to be able to play in the bowl, who might not be able to play, and possibly share that information?
Yeah, I'd rather do it all at once, Essex, rather than piecemeal. I think right now, there's one player that we know is going to be out because he had a season-ending surgery. And then, kind of when we get back this week, we'll see how some of the rehabs are going. So, we'll have a much better idea probably, in the next week to 10 days. But I think we're going to have most people for it. I think everyone's trending in a good direction. I don't think we're going to have a lot of guys out injury-wise, other than the guys that we have already been out for the year. We already know that Luke Pettibone and Michael Frogue and those guys are not going to be able to play. And, we're hoping Rondell Bothroyd will be able to go and his ankle will be better. So again, it's, the game is, still 2.5, 3 weeks away. I think the next week to 10 days and how those rehabs go on injuries, we'll have a much better feel.
Brandon Haynes.
Hey, Coach. So for Missouri fans who maybe haven't seen your team as much, how would you want them to look at your team, and kind of what would you want them to know about your program before they face off against Wake Forest?
I just think we play a very exciting brand of football. We're very unique and creative on offense with our RPO system. We've certainly played in a lot of exciting, high-scoring games, and it's a bunch of players that maybe came here not as heralded as some other programs, but have really worked hard and developed themselves into some really good football players that have played at a high level now for 7 straight years. So we're Again, it's our seventh straight bowl, and we, you earn bowl bids with wins. And so we're in a good spot, and and I think just how much respect we have for Missouri and Eli and the job that those guys have done. I know we're both in very competitive leagues and very competitive divisions. That it's not a layup to get to a bowl. You got to win some good games to be in this position. So should be a great game.
Cam Lemons.
Dave, now that you got a chance to look at the full body of work minus the bowl game, for guys like guys like Damon Claiborne, Wesley Grimes, Nick Sharp, etc. What have you gotten to see out of those guys, especially now that you've had a few more practices, and how have you been able to kind of relay that this bowl game is able to really start to try to parlay them into being more pivotal roles going down the line?
Well, I think the big thing with the bowl with those guys, Cam, is getting those guys ready for spring and winning a job in playing time. All those guys are going to have a chance. All three of those guys, and there's other guys in that position across the board. On defense, BJ Williams would be a guy. On defense, Deshaun Jones has really come on. Zamari Stevenson. There's probably 8 to 10 of those guys, including Demond and Wesley and Nick Sharp and Matt Golbin, that we need those guys to develop and have really big roles for us next year. And that's one of the really big things about a bowl game is we are investing so many reps in those guys last weekend, this weekend, and through the bowl prep. And I think what they need to figure out is where they are and where they need to get to by the end of spring so that they can have the roles that they want next year. And all those guys have a high skill level. But the consistency and to be able to do it day in, day out, and to get to the point that they're not thinking about the play call, that they're able to play fast. I think all those guys now know the offense and know the defense, but it's being able to process things at a faster speed, which allows you to play at a high level. And that's what those guys need to do between now and spring before we start camp in August.
Any final questions for Coach? Awesome. Thanks for your time today, Coach Clawson.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to see everybody, and hope to see you at the bowl game. Go Deeks.
Thanks, Dave.